Apologies for this delay.
Uh-huh.
So I think we may start now, yeah? Okay. Yeah, at first, greetings, good morning for those in Ukraine and Poland, and good afternoon for those who are in India. I'm very, very sorry for this delay. This is because of the power cuts and shortages of electricity we have now. So that's why you see like my background is rather gray today.
Also to the invoices, right?
I would like to ask
I'm gonna do that now.
to switch off microphones for those who are not speaking, if I may. And
what should I do with all the original stuff?
We can stop. Yeah, thank you. So welcome for our today's discussion of the results of the recent visit of Narendra Modi to Ukraine and Poland. It's a great honor for me today to moderate this discussion with important speakers. I would like to present speakers now, and then we will have also the word from the Embassy of Ukraine in India. It's a great honor to have today here representatives of India, of Gulshan Sachdeva from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome, Professor Sachdeva. Also, Jagannath Panda from the Stockholm Institute of the Research of South Asia and India Pacific. Also, Dr. Patryk Kugiel from the Polish Institute of International Studies. And from Ukraine, we have my colleague, Analyst Natalia Pleksiyanko-Butyrska, Analyst of the Global Outreach Program from the Ukrainian Prism. It's my honor also to give floor to Artem Noskov from the Ukrainian Embassy in India with a welcome word. Mr. Noskov, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for giving the floor. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone for joining this event, and thank for Prism for hosting this event, for having us at this important event. Ambassador is now in Ukraine following on this visit, so I'm with direct input from our embassy in New Delhi. So first of all, I would like to thank also to our colleagues in Poland for helping us in arrangement of this visit, because it was quite challenging logistically. So without details, I can tell you that there was a huge support from them to have Prime Minister in Ukraine. So coming down to the visit, it's really a historical visit, and it's for the first time in our bilateral relation, the head of government of India came to Ukraine. And it's not only important by this visit itself, but it's also the visit of a leader of the global South country, which is not quite common after the beginning of the war. And here we see that the Prime Minister came and expressed his support to Ukraine. And it's very important because India's leadership is crucial for position of many other countries, for many other countries of the global South. So definitely it would say the right message, and it would resonate in many countries. I can tell you that we do highly value our relationship with countries, let's say our traditional partners in Europe, in North America, but Asia and generally the global South are no less important. So we do believe that this visit by Prime Minister Modi is an example of success of the Ukrainian president's strategy to outreach to all corners of the world, not only would expect to those closest allies and closest partners. So this visit, it took quite a long time. As we said, it's for its first visit, it took quite a long time to arrange. So it was a long-term interaction from both sides. We had quite a high expectations, and I'm glad that this visit happened despite all the logistical and security challenges. This visit was preceded by a long communication between Prime Minister and President, between our foreign ministers and National Security Advisor on the Indian side and head of the Ukrainian President's office on another side. Yeah, an important message that this visit happened also on the day of our National Flag Day, just the day before the Independence Day. Because when you work with countries such India, it's important to read messages, and symbolism is quite an important thing. So Asia is quite sensitive and quite attentive to such symbols. So it's a very good sign. So the Prime Minister came to welcome Ukraine with this important holiday. While we worked on this visit, we wanted to be focused on as many areas and topics as possible. So while many just on the eve of this visit, most experts discussed about security and political agenda, about peace formula, about India's engagement in peace process. It's very important to understand that our relationship is very multifaceted. So we have a lot of topics, a lot of issues to discuss, and this cooperation is very successful. So we wanted to make this, well, I mean, we as the embassy and our foreign ministry, and we saw understanding of such approach from the India side as well, to build it as the win-win visit with good deliverables in different spheres. At the end of the day, we saw 4 memorandum signs and agreements, joint statement, and quite a lot of arrangements which will further develop after this visit. An important sign is that one-on-one meeting, which initially was planned for half an hour, it lasted almost 3 hours. So we see that both leaders, they found topics for negotiations which they see they have added value from their personal engagement, from their personal interaction. So we see, well, I don't like this word when it comes to politics chemistry, personal chemistry, but in this case, they found place for negotiations and place for trustful discussion on specific topics of our cooperation, where interests of both countries were discussed. Ukraine is a contributor to many issues like food security for India, military cooperation, defense and security. So this visit will be followed up by those arrangements which were made public, and again, not all of them were made public. I can announce that quite soon we hope to have the next session of the Intergovernmental Commission, as it was agreed by Prime Minister and our President, by the end of this year. So we actively work on this. We see joint intent to elevate our bilateral relations to the level of strategic partnership. We are not there yet, but we are already working on it. We also have quite an important and probably the core subject of this visit is India's engagement in peace process, peace formula. What we saw, and it's very important, it's crucial for success of efforts to bring peace to Ukraine, that India remain committed to Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and they are ready to stay on board of this process. they already participate in NSA's meetings. They already actively negotiate with both Ukraine and other stakeholders. Definitely, Ukraine would expect more, let's say, strong wording from India regarding Russia's aggression, regarding war, and so on and so forth. But again, we are stay focused, first of all, on practical deliverables. So if India is ready and will continue to be engaged in the process of finding peace based on the international law, and as our president said, that we are ready, we are open to different options as long as they not trade our territory and they do not froze conflict. So finalizing this may be quite an extended initial statement. I would like to say that this visit is not the culmination of our bilateral efforts to bring our leaders together. This is the beginning of the next chapter. As I said, the IGC will be soon. Prime Minister invited President Zelensky to India with the visit, and our president accepted it. And when Indian journalists asked him when he's planning to go, he said the sooner the better. So we do hope that quite soon we will able to arrange this visit. We will be able to fill the agenda even more packed, because definitely visit to Ukraine, it was quite short. It was considering security issues, but hopefully India will continue this very important and interesting trend. So I welcome. Again, I thank Prism for hosting this event, and I welcome everyone in this who participate in this event today to speak about the visit, to interact and exchange your opinion, because it's really valuable to see, to hear your perspective. You are expert on Polish, India, Ukrainian, Indian relationships, to see your perspective on this visit, because you influence, you impact of understanding and perception of bilateral relations. So thank you, and have a good discussion.
Thank you so much for this initial statement. It was very interesting to hear your vision of the results of the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Ukraine. And I think we will start with our Indian guests. However, with a representative of India who now lives in Stockholm, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Jagannath Panda, who is the head of the Stockholm Center for South Asian and
Добрый день. Вам удобно сейчас?
Could you please switch off the microphone, Dr. Dubovik?
Ясно. Да,
I'm very sorry if when we do not.
Ola, we cannot hear you. You are muted.
Okay, yes, I'm unmuted. It's my honor to present Dr. Jagannath Panda, and I know that you have really a few minutes left because of your time schedule. So I think I will combine the two questions that I sent you, and this will be about the Central Eastern Europe and the recent interest that we see from India towards the Central Eastern Europe and also the Baltic states. Because of the recently the embassy was opened in Lithuania, there is the decision to open in Latvia also, and also how this more engagement or wider engagement with Central Europe and also Baltic states can influence the situation and the position of India on the Russia-Ukrainian war. So, Dr. Panda, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ola, and good morning to all from Stockholm and It's a great pleasure to be here, and I thank Prism Ukrainian, for these invitations, and also great to be with my own known Indian colleagues and European colleagues and other Ukrainian colleagues in particular. Thank you very much, and I think in the opening remarks, a lot has been said about the Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine, particularly in a short notice, and I think that explains the paradigm of today's India-Ukraine engagement, which is happening in a new context. And I think from my point of view, if I have to address both of your questions, that how India is looking today, its engagement with the Central and Eastern European countries, and how India is looking at the Nordic and Baltic countries. They are two different chapters, but again, at the same time, they belong to the common security and political discourse that India is trying to build with the Europe. So in that context, both my answers to both the questions are going to complement with each other. I will first start with the India's engagement with Central and Eastern European region, particularly in the context of Prime Minister Modi's visit. And I think what we are currently seeing in the European context is that security of the Central and Eastern European countries, be it security countries, defense-centric specific issues, or the larger political discussion, they are an integral part of the European security framework, as well as which is also being shared in a complementary format with the Indo-Pacific security framework. And that's the new thing, and that's the unique thing which is emerging after the Ukraine war. Countries like Poland are taking a lead in the discussion today, and probably Poland is showing a much more open positions towards Indo-Pacific, towards the towards taking a position towards engagement with Indo-Pacific countries, which are minus China countries in Asia. So in that context, I think India's engagement with Poland, and particularly Prime Minister Modi's visit to Poland is a new beginning, because it happened after a long time. Now, keeping that in mind, what is also important here to see Prime Minister Modi's visit to Poland is a continuation of the power rivalry which was existing before the Ukraine war. And this power rivalry is not limited only to US and China rivalry. It was also between US and Russia power rivalry. So therefore, I think Prime Minister Modi's visit to Poland is a continuation of India trying to maintain its equicordial relations with all the divided parts of the world. So when it comes to Poland, Poland is a breeze to not only to the Eastern European countries, but to the larger European security frameworks. The other thing is that what we are seeing with Prime Minister Modi's visit to Poland is that for the first time, in fact, I think both Professor Sachdeva and Dr. Patryk Kugiel will recall our discussion just a few weeks back or a month back. We both were discussing that how India-Poland relationship, despite of so much promise, has not really been pushed to a comprehensive strategic partnership. But today, I think with the Prime Minister Modi's visit, that formality has been accorded, which is a positive, development. So in that context, Prime Minister Modi's visit has given a stamp, a authority to these bilateral frameworks between India and Poland to remain as an example relationship, as a referral relationship for the entire engagement that India is trying to promote with the Central and Eastern European countries. Number two is that if we try to see in the context of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine, as I said, this is a significant, as everybody, all of us know that this is the first ever visit by the Indian Prime Minister since the diplomatic relationship has been established since 1992. But more interestingly, what this visit says is that it explains three particular things. One, that India-Ukraine relationship is, even though the diplomatic relationship has been established with the post-Cold War narrative, but today we are seeing a peace narrative emerging between India and Ukraine. That here is India, which has been quite cautious and quite silent on the Ukraine war. But it is not here to shy away from the fact that to advocate peace globally and peace in the context of Europe. And that is a huge backing to Ukrainian cause. And I think our Ukrainian colleagues should take a strong note that despite of the fact that India shares this strong relationship with Russia, Prime Minister Modi visited, and that's also barely few weeks after he met Modi, he met Putin. To make the statement that India-Ukraine relationship is a trajectory of the peace framework is a bold statement, and that explains about India's defined foreign policy approach in the world. The second approach, I think, which is emerging, that this visit is also articulating in a clear format that here is India, which is open to all kind of daring networks and engagement, particularly in the security and defense field. If you try to understand India's foreign policy approach, even though there has been a few set of countries in Europe where India has always maintained a good, steady, and strong relationship, particularly with France, with Germany, and few other Nordic countries, including Sweden. But this relationship has been more or less very unidimensional in specific field. But today, I think the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Ukraine and to Poland explains that India is open to defense and security engagement, and also to talk about those issues which India has been not really engaging with these countries to discuss. The third, critical aspect is, I think, this is the most important aspect. In both the visit, what we are seeing a commonality that India is willing to talk about defense issues. And I think in Indian foreign policy, this is a critical issue which is emerging. As everybody, all of us know that India has been purchasing weapons from the Soviet Union period and from Russia, and majority of its bulk of its purchase comes from Russia. But today, I think what is being realized in India that the time has come to not only expedite that diversification process which is going on for last 10 years, but also to give a new direction to the diversification process. Now, when we are talking about India-EU Trade and Technology Council, in that context, Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine and Prime Minister Modi's visit to Poland is unique, because how do you really negotiate the Trade and Technology Council agreements unless you have the confidence from its member states? Unless you really have an agreement on critical technologies and defense issues, you cannot really talk about trade and technology network expanding, because everything is interrelated. When we are talking about trade and economic ties, defense trade is an important component of this engagement. So therefore, with Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine and Poland, there has been definitely a new beginning, and it has given a fillip to boost that confidence, the channel of confidence which was lacking in the India-EU Trade and Technology Council framework. Now, coming to the Baltic and the Nordic regions, I think I'll just keep it short so that we could discuss it a little bit further. One is that I think we know that India has been promoting its ties with some of the Nordic countries, particularly with Sweden, and the relationship with Sweden is becoming a referral a referral point for India's engagement with Nordic. But I think here what is happening is that India is also looking at its Baltic and Nordic engagement in a comprehensive manner. And therefore, this visit of Prime Minister Modi to Poland is also in an indication, and also the visit to Ukraine is an indication that India is trying to fill that gap in its foreign policy, which was lacking, that we need a comprehensive engagement at a time when there has been a faceless for China, because the way China has overtly supported Russia and provided arms and ammunition for the Ukraine war to the Russians, that at a particular time when there is the Chinese encroachment is expanding in the Baltic regions along with the Russians, particularly on the cyber security field. India is the country from the Indo-Pacific regions that the Baltic and the Nordic countries should really engage with. Now, while saying that, I think there are a number of critical areas which is coming out to be discussed, because this is what we saw Prime Minister Modi discussing with Poland and Prime Minister Modi discussing with Ukraine during his visit. Issues like innovation, green transition, health, IPR, new technology, space, education, and these are all part of the greater trade framework engagement that India is planning. But more than that, I think what is really this visit of Prime Minister Modi has explained that India is here to engage with a new Europe, and India is not here to make any discount or concession when it comes to Ukrainian cause and to the Baltic security or the Central Eastern European security. I'll stop here and probably invite your comments and questions if there are any.
Thank you, Dr. Panda. I think we will gather the questions. I know you have to leave in 10 minutes, yes? So the questions will be afterwards, and I think we will pass the questions to you if they are, and we'll continue with the other speakers. And I would like to ask the answers to be like not more than 7 minutes, so that because we will have two rounds of questions from my side, and then we will have also questions from the audience. Yeah, and you, by the way, you can ask your questions in the chat. So in case they are, we will pass them on just directly to the speaker, and maybe you will do like exception, and he or she can answer it directly. But now I would like to move further and to ask Dr. Professor Gulshan Sachdeva, professor of the European Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. So good day, Professor Sachdeva. And we're speaking now, analyzing this historic visit to both Poland and Ukraine. I have seen your commentaries in Indian also media, and also we've had lots of Indian journalists and a huge interview of our president to Indian journalists in Ukraine. So my question to you, my first question to you will be, how would you evaluate this perception of now of the Russia-Ukraine war, and also the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Ukraine after in India, among Indian audience, also among experts and journalists?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ola, and thank you for this opportunity by Ukrainian Prism. Good to see old friends, from Poland, from Europe, from Ukraine, and from other parts in Europe. Since I have 7 minutes, I'll just try to, touch specifically what you have asked. And I'm really glad that a friend from the Embassy of Ukraine in Delhi, Mr. Artem, he has really put the, things in really right perspective. One is that, I think it's quite clear. I mean, as he mentioned, I think everybody's mentioning Prime Minister's visit to Poland and Ukraine was truly historic. I mean, there is no doubt about this. In different ways you can interpret it, how this was historic. And I think many analysts have already done that. So there is no two questions about this. And second thing, as Mr. Artem has also mentioned, there was also a lot of symbolism. There was symbolism because one is, Prime Minister visiting Ukraine after a couple of weeks of his, very successful visit to Russia. And now focusing not just only Ukraine, because, a couple of weeks ago when we were in Poland, I mean, Jagannath Panda mentioned, and Patryk, Kugiel, and many others were there. So there was anticipation that Prime Minister would be visiting Poland, visiting Ukraine. But of course, since he would be visiting Ukraine via Poland, so there was always a possibility that he would also visit Poland. So I think this was very good that this happened. And the major beneficiary obviously is, to begin with Poland, because this strategic partnership which happened, we have been talking about this for more than a decade now, that there is a clear need for India to have strategic partnership with Poland for various reasons, not just bilateral, but also Poland's growing influence within the European institutions, and balancing India's engagement, because you see India's strategic partnership you have with the EU, with France, Germany, earlier with UK, and more recently also with Italy and Greece. But in Central and Eastern Europe, Prime Minister made a lot of visit in the last 10 years, but not to my knowledge, a single visit to this part of the region. And for geostrategic reasons also, it was because the Chinese influence was increasing in this part of the world for some time. So I think the balance has been made, and I think now it's up to India and Poland to really take forward how this strategic partnership would happen. Now, going beyond to the Ukrainian visit and the question you asked, how this has been perceived in India. Uh, Now, this is this visit. Before this visit, there was a lot of build-up, and everybody knew, in fact, that this is a very, very complex issue. I mean, not that Prime Minister Modi is visiting Ukraine, going to resolve this issue in any way. And unlike many other countries like China, Turkey, Switzerland, and Ukraine in its own peace plan, India hasn't really come out with any peace plan. And there was no, and it was never mentioned that it was going to, and even it was also quite clear that India was not going to mediate, because here there are big players involved. And I think they have capacities to talk to each other, but Americans and Europeans and Russians, I mean, they have been doing it for decades. They can do it. But at the same time, since this particular crisis, the war in Ukraine, is really affecting everybody, and affecting not just the European security, but also affecting, a lot of other. I'm not just talking about, energy markets or food markets or fertilizers, etc., but also, the broader geopolitics has really changed. And to some extent, for India's own concern, that the focus of the West has somehow moved away from China, which again, India would not like to do that, because before that, there was a lot of focus on the Indo-Pacific, and so India would like that focus to be back in this region. So India would be very happy, would like to play some kind of role if it is possible anyway, because as I said, the primary players are different, there are large other kind of issues involved. And as I think Mr. Arthur mentioned, India is uncomfortable with the way I think the Russia has expanded in this part, and the territorial integrity, so in the sovereignty, and these are very dear, I mean, kind of values to India, and particularly Ukraine is a very close friend, close country. But at the same time, everybody knows, because of the very close partnership with Russia. So India has been in a bit of an uncomfortable. So in one of the, I mean, if you are asking for me the perceptions, some of the perceptions were there that why Prime Minister is going there to kind of rebalance or balance, the relations. Not that India would abandon in any way, its own partnership with Russia, but at the same time, can you really now, because you also have very close partnership with the United States and also with the European Union, and also there is a new momentum in relationship between India and Ukraine. So there is certain kind of balancing which has been done. So that was one kind of commentary you would look everywhere at. And then, of course, as a responsible kind of, there is a mission for India to play a role in the global South. So what kind of role, and all the global South countries, they are uncomfortable. So can India, and India was also trying to project itself during the G20 presidency and continue to be in the global South. So how do you really, what kind of role actually India can play there? Of course, nobody really expected miracles that it will happen with this visit, but at least now that, that's what their good intention. I think, I mean, put it this way, that, I think with very good intention that we can do whatever we can do. But of course, that depends on the, both from Ukraine and what kind of role they would like for India to play. But we will be willing to do that. But of course, you also know that there are big geopolitics, big players are there. But only thing, in fact, I expected, from this visit, that one is, of course, this will give a new momentum to India-Ukraine ties, which of course it has given, and to some extent, this would also, kind of de-link India-Ukraine ties more from the India-Russia ties, which is also perhaps is going to happen now after this visit. So you can look both these relations independently from each other. There are problems, and India would like this problem to be resolved as quickly as possible to the satisfaction of both the parties. But can we actually, till the time things are not resolved, and things are actually escalated now, as we have seen in the last couple of weeks, what kind of really role India could play? And I, in fact, the paper, in fact, I wrote just before Prime Minister's visit, particularly looking at the reconstruction part in Ukraine, because there is a huge reconstruction which is required, and the World Bank, is giving the figures about 500 billion or so. And of course, I mean, so one thing perhaps this would happen as a result of this visit would be that there's more strategic clarity in the policymakers in India, in their minds, that how Ukraine is important for you, what kind of role, particularly in the humanitarian aspect, in the reconstruction part, at least that is India should really start preparing, because ultimately, the war will end. I mean, that's quite clear. When it is going to end, we do not know, but it will end. And even during this war, you continue to have reconstruction, you continue to have humanitarian support from all. And so far, I think this was seen by India and by and the policymakers in many countries in the global south, mainly as a kind of a Western project. That since this, this is the Western, the United States and the Europeans, I mean, they are involved in this game with the Russia. So if they are doing it, I mean, they have plenty of resources, let them do whatever they are doing. So the main responsibility is with them. But with more strategic clarity, as we have seen earlier in Afghanistan, when there is a strategic and political clarity, India have huge capacity to play this role in the reconstruction. I mean, India, invested more than 3 billion in Afghanistan, and a lot of things can be done. And that with that entry of India in a reasonably significant way, that also becomes a more international project, because it's not just has to be seen as a Western project. It's not just only about resources. It also has to be seen as everybody is involved in this project. I'm just going to end in a minute or so. So I think there, a couple of agreements which have been signed, whether in the medicines and drugs, on humanitarian aspects, on agriculture, these are good. But I think I expected much more than that actually from his visit. I thought maybe when he's going to go there, I mean, other things about peace plan, other thing would keep happening, but India perhaps would really raise its profile in a bigger way. That was, to me, I mean, they have talked about it, but still there is no, I mean, I didn't really see very clear cut, still a kind of roadmap how India is really going to engage itself in this reconstruction, starting with a couple of things like, with the health sector, with the education sector, and with the capacity building and many others, and then going into much more bigger reconstruction involving the private sector and other capacities into this. I think that we have to continue to working on this, and that kind of roadmap is required. And another thing, that last point I would like to make, I mean, you said what kind of perceptions after the visit. So before that, there was a lot of build-up. But after that, you can see a lot of commentaries which is happening in India. This is kind of, I would say, a bit of a divided feelings. You also must understand that there is also a huge ecosystem in India, which is kind of very pro-Russia ecosystem. And, I'm not saying it in any negative sense, because this is the kind of relationship India had for decades with Soviet Union / later Russia. So that ecosystem also works in somehow. But at the same time, there is new understanding how India is really going to involve itself, de-link India's ties with Ukraine from Russia, and how India can engage more and more. And overall, I would say this was a historic new momentum here. And it has given and as I think Mr. Arthur mentioned, now it's a multifaceted relationship which we have to build. It's not just only about what India will do on the peace plan or something, then whatever India could do, will do there. But I think we really need to work on many, many other areas, then keep working on this, because ultimately, it's a huge country, very important country in Central and Eastern Europe, which India has to continue to engage. And we had, very strong ties in the past as well. And I think, as your president, Mr. Zelensky, also mentioned, you have a huge capacities in so many sectors, and India and Ukraine would continue to work in all those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sachdeva. Well, actually, you mentioned also the question which I wanted to ask you a bit later on the reconstruction and possible India's engagement. And I want to stress that Professor Sachdeva is the author of a very thorough policy paper on India's possible role in reconstruction of Ukraine. So we can share the link to the paper if someone hadn't read it yet. So we can share it later, and you're welcome to read it. And also now I would like to invite our Polish guest, Dr. Patryk Kugiel, it's a great honor to have you here, and we are very happy that you agreed to join us. Well, it was also a historic visit to Poland, and well, I think the result was also important. So India and Poland elevated their partnership to the strategic level. And I would like to ask you more about the specifics of this strategic partnership, which spheres it will involve mainly, and how will this visit impact the partnership between India and Poland? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. It's my great pleasure for being here. Thank you for the invitation to this timely and important discussion. I think we all have a lot to celebrate. It was a historic visit for Ukraine, but the same can be said about Poland. As Gulshan has said already, we have been discussing the strategic partnership potential for the last 15 or 10 years, and Polish diplomacy was trying to get there for the last 10 years at least. So eventually we are here, and we were waiting for Prime Minister of India to come to Poland for 45 years. So this is, on many accounts, this is a truly historical moment for us. But I think it was also very successful visit for all interested in stability, peace, and prosperity in Europe. So I think this is very good news for Central Europe, for the European Union as such, because it will have more balanced, and it will use better the potential for the partnership between the European Union and India by strengthening these links between India and Central European countries, members of the European Union. So I think this is an exceptional case in international relations when we can truly talk about win-win scenario for everyone. But I would also like to stress that the biggest winner from this visit is actually India. India, without being pushed and without changing its position on the war in Ukraine, it has managed to rebuild partnership with Poland and Ukraine, strengthen its relations with the European Union and with the Central Europe as such. It has rebuilt trust and confidence among many people in the West because of this visit, and still without changing its position on the war, without criticizing Russia, and sending only this message of peace broker and peace keeper in the world. So this is actually a very good move by Indian diplomacy, another good move by the Indian diplomacy. They must be congratulated for this. And talking about the content of the strategic partnership, the visit itself was arranged on a very short notice. So it was not truly prepared in detail. So therefore, I think we haven't seen any agreement signed, any new initiatives announced, etc. So looking only at the declaration of the elevation of the partnership to the strategic level, we can see in certain areas on which the focus was put, and most outstanding one would be defense cooperation. I think it will open the floor for more contacts and cooperation in the defense sector, but also other areas were mentioned by both prime ministers. When it comes to food processing, agriculture, IT, space exploration, green technology and green transition, and connectivity, and many, many more. So there was very broad canvas on which now we can paint a more detailed, more precise picture. And I think in coming months, we will see very intensive work to fill this strategic partnership with very detailed and precise content. And so I would read this strategic partnership declaration as an opening of the new chapter, like already Mr. Artem said about regarding the Ukraine-India relations. We are opening a new chapter in this cooperation, and it will allow us to keep the momentum, to keep the high-level exchanges between the leaders of Poland and India in coming months. Poland will hold the presidency of the European Union Council next semester. So it will also play an important role at the European level. It will hold the summit for the 3Cs initiative, which is a connectivity regional initiative in Central Europe, in which Ukraine is also an associated member of the 3Cs initiative. So it will open also a possibility to discuss with India more on when it comes to infrastructure development, connectivity, and linking more Central Europe and Ukraine with India and with the Indo-Pacific. So I think also maybe I will end with this my understanding of why this visit took place in the first place, because it was kind of puzzling why now Prime Minister Modi decided to come to Poland and why he decided to go to Ukraine. And I think this is very much connected to the basic premises of Indian foreign policy and what already Gulshan Sachdeva said, and Jagannath Panda, that India is trying to maintain its neutral position when it comes to the war in Ukraine, to maintain good relations with Russia and with the West. So it was kind of a balancing act between those two sides of the conflict. So I believe that after being elected for the third term, Prime Minister Modi decided that it was highest time to go to Russia to reassure Russian friends that India is not leaving it and that India would like to keep investing in the relationship with Russia in order not to let Russia engage too far with China. Once the decision was taken that the trip to Moscow will take place, Indian leadership decided that it must be balanced with the visit to Ukraine in the following weeks. So it was probably decided already before the visit to Moscow in July, but it was, to my understanding, how I read it, it was already pre-planned that India Prime Minister Modi will go to Moscow and then he will visit Ukraine and Kiev. And therefore, on the way to Ukraine, he decided to come to Poland. And this coincided with this anniversary of Polish-India, 17th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations. So everything was well prepared. The ground was well prepared for this trip to take place. But nevertheless, regardless of what the reasons were, I think this visit will open and give a new momentum to Poland-India relations, to Ukraine-Indian relations that will be put on the separate footing. It will be dehyphenated from the relations with Russia. And in general, it will strengthen the Central European and European Union cooperation and partnership with India. So now we can look forward for more interactions, and I think India is still capable to play some positive role in finding a peace formula for the war in Ukraine in coming months. And I will stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Kugiel. Were very speaker that it took the exact time we asked speakers to take. And now I would like, by the way, concerning also the India-Ukraine relations, so if we pay attention to the dynamics of the political level of the relations, we could see that over the last years we had more interactions, either through phone or through meetings on the side of some other events, also with visits of the foreign minister of Ukraine and also deputy foreign minister. So it also was like we were expecting that after all these dynamics, we should have finally the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Ukraine, as it was so much expected. And I would like to ask my colleague Natalia Plaksienko-Butyrska, an analyst of the Ukrainian Prism and also an independent analyst on Asia, to talk on the the Ukrainian perception of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Kyiv. So we have 4 agreements, we have the communique, but besides these agreements, how would you evaluate the impact of the visit on the bilateral relations of Ukraine and India? So Natalia, switch on the mic and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you all participants for this conversation. Olga, during our visit to India in December last year, we could not even imagine that 8 months later, we would meet in Ukraine a high respected Indian delegation headed by Prime Minister Modi. I think it's a very good visit. Both Ukraine and India admitted this visit to be historic. If we take into account the fact that the Prime Minister of India visited Kyiv for the first time in the whole history of Ukraine independence, this visit is really of great importance. It is also a serious diplomatic sign for Ukraine that the Prime Minister of such a large and influential Asia country came to Kyiv during the war. Asia country and during the war, 2 important things. And I would highlight several important results of this visit. First, after Prime Minister Modi's visit to Moscow, which coincided with the shelling of the Ahmadi Children Hospital, Ukraine and India needed a sincere conversation. It was important for India to clarify its position and reaffirm the balanced approach it had been declaring for 2.5 years. It was important for the Ukrainian side to show the consequences of this war and explain its position regarding its end. Secondly, Russia is trying to oppose the countries of the so-called Global South to the countries of the West. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Kyiv on the eve of Independence Day and confirmed respect for Ukrainians' sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is an important signal for support of Ukraine. Third, India and Ukraine have had a low level of dialogue at a high political level in recent years, especially before the war. This had a negative impact on the development of bilateral relations, I think. The meeting of the leaders of the 2 countries can become an impetus for active and dynamic bilateral cooperation at all levels. The 2 countries signed 4 memorandums. We cannot call them a breakthrough, but they lay the foundation for future interaction. In a joint communique, the parties agreed to work on raising the level of bilateral relations from a comprehensive partnership to a strategic partnership in the future, and I think it's an important signal for both countries. Fourthly, this is the main point for Ukraine today, the end of the war and the achievement of a lasting and just peace. Prime Minister Modi emphasized that India is not a neutral party and that India is ready to make its proactive contribution to all those efforts that are being made to achieve peace. He said, I personally, as a friend, and it is very important that Prime Minister Modi quote is a friend of Ukraine, if I can play any role, it would very much like to play that role in a peaceful settlement. Ukraine needs India's active involvement in the process of diplomatic settlement of the conflict, implementation of the peace formula, etc. And I think it's very good for both sides. Zelensky also offered India to hold a 2nd peace summit. India has experience in organizing important international events and summits. India has authority in the world. Recall India's role in adopting, for example, the final communique during the G20 summit in Indonesia, which was very helpful for Ukraine. And it would be a good decision if India agreed to host the summit. Fifth, Ukraine and India look at the world from the point of view of development and prospects. The two countries can complement each other. There are many sectors in which they can cooperate apart from the traditional areas. And you mentioned about Indian participation in the reconstruction of Ukraine. From Ukrainian side, Ukraine have experience in the development of advanced high-tech military equipment, and it can also strengthen India's military-industrial complex, I think. India can become a window for Ukraine in Asia, and from our side, Ukraine for India can become a window to Europe as a country that will soon become a member of the EU. And according to our representative of embassy of Ukraine, this relation will continue, and I think that this visit is a very good push for strengthening a real, very good relation between two countries.
Thank you, Natalia. Now I will have one more question to each of the speaker, and we will have the questions from the audience, because I think we really need. We have lots of them already in the chat, and I think there will be questions from the listeners who are with us, and there are lots of them. So my first question will be to Professor Sachdeva. I wanted to ask you more on the reconstruction and India possibilities. You already mentioned about that, to engage with them. But one more clarification I need. You said that visit to Moscow was successful, but we had different reports on that it was not as successful as it should be. Why do you see it as successful?
Well, I mean, I think from Indian point of view, visit to Russia was successful because India had strategic partnership with Russia since 2000, and this strategic partnership they used to have summit meeting every year without any break for almost for till 2021. So for 2 years, because of war, the summit meeting did not take place virtually or otherwise. So in that sense, there was a continuation of what was, I mean, people might have thought that, there is certain problem in India-Russia relations. So to kind of set that kind of things in order, that despite all other things happening, India continued to be a close partner of Russia. And another thing which has happened in the last, or in fact, in a very interesting way, this has happened because one of the things which was really weak in India-Russia relations, that was, there was no, because, strategically, politically, they were very close, but there was no commercial component because of the India-Russia trade got stuck about 10 billion for many years. Now, because, the Europe decided to move away from Russian energy, and suddenly, Russia has become India's, the fourth or fifth largest trading partner because of discounted oil, which India is buying from Russia. And a large part of this is also, in fact, going back to Europe and to US after processing. Now, they also need to resolve this issue because Russia is under sanctions. So how do you really make all these payments? Certain mechanisms have been made. So Russia is also becoming closer to China. So, even more so now. So the whole kind of worries, I mean, I think within this broader context, India, I mean, it was kind of seen, it was quite useful and successful visit of Prime Minister visit. I mean, only thing perhaps, I mean, I think that somebody has also asked this question in the chat box that, during the same day when Prime Minister there, I mean, you also had an attack on, hospital and children. But I think those, I mean, of course, it was noted by Indian analysts. But by and large, I think it was seen as a not really in any way negative way that India has been able to put this thing together again, despite very difficult circumstances and entirely different circumstances. And that you can see from all kind of statements from the Prime Minister, from the Foreign Minister, and from many of the analysts. I think none of them they really saw in any negative way. I mean, there was a lot of commentary in the West about Prime Minister hugging Putin and going during this difficult time. But I think that was seen more of a the visit seen by the Western perspective rather than by Indian perspective, within India. So in India, I don't think that visit was seen in any way negatively. I mean, at least that's my impression has been, by and large, I would say. But now, with this visit, to Ukraine and Poland, I think India is trying to again balance. India is trying to show that yes, we have certain interests here, but at the same time, there are also a lot of interests with other countries as well. And then, how do we really navigate things? While doing that, this is what I think. The question was about Russia, so that's what I think it was seen in India. Yes. I think you are muted.
Yeah. I'm switching on. So thank you for this answer, and thank you for being brief. So I have one more also brief question to Dr. Kugiel, and we'll have one more to Natalia, and then we will get questions from the audience, so that to keep in time. Dr. Kugiel, my question will be, so a little bit Dr. Panda already elaborated this from the Indian side, the Indian perspective, and I would like to also to ask you from the Polish and maybe Central Eastern European perspective. How has the perception of India in our region, I mean, in the region of Central Europe, also Baltics, changed, and how can countries of this region also, which know like the which know and understand each other, cooperate maybe, so that to boost our mutual cooperation with India as an important power in the Pacific region? Do you see this cooperation between our countries also as possible? And yeah, please.
Yeah, certainly there is a growing interest in cooperation with India in our part of Europe. And there have been growing efforts from several Central European countries to strengthen cooperation with India. But for a long time, there was no interest from the other side, from New Delhi. I remember in 2014, when Foreign First Minister of India went to Hungary, to Budapest, there was a short article published by the Minister of External Affairs of India titled Central Europe, the road less traveled. And it was explaining why Central Europe occupied very marginal place in Indian worldviews. And a couple of years later, I wrote a longer article claiming that Central Europe is the road more traveled these days. Maybe it was still premature, but these days we are seeing the realization of this growing interest from the Indian side in our part of the world. We have seen the strategic partnership, with Poland was not the first one from our region, it was the second one, because in January, Czech Republic signed this kind of document with India. Last year, India engaged stronger with Greece, but nevertheless, the visit to Poland was the first visit of Prime Minister from India after the end of the Cold War to the whole region of Central Europe. If we see the Central Europe as a new member state that joined the European Union after 2004, this region has been neglected in Indian foreign policy for years in political terms, but also in economic terms. The whole 13 countries from making part of the European Union, they account for 11% of total trade of the European Union with India. And the remaining 14 countries of the European Union from the Western Europe are responsible for 90% of trade with India. So it shows you that there was some imbalance in the relationship when it comes to economic cooperation. So now I hope that we are at the verge of more balanced partnership between Europe and India. We will see more vibrant cooperation from other Central European countries. Central Europe can offer a new entry point for Indian and other Indo-Pacific partners to Europe, to Central Europe, to Northern Europe. We are talking about this Three Seas initiative, which can offer an entry point, through Greece, through Bulgaria, through Romania, through Ukraine to Central Europe, and then further north to the Nordic and Baltic states and to Germany and other Western countries. We are interested in strengthening cooperation in defense sector. Czechs are already doing this, and the Romanians and other countries. We have an expertise in maintenance and servicing of the post-Russian, post-Soviet equipment, military equipment. We offer some cost-effective new technologies in certain sectors. We can add value to stronger European Union-India relationship. And Ukraine can be part of this journey. I think we all have very cordial memories and good history of cooperation with India, dating even back to the Cold War years. We have no colonial baggage that could hinder our cooperation with Indian counterparts. We have certain added value we can bring to the relationship between European Union and India. So I think, Europe's relations with India will now breathe with two lungs, certain Western and Eastern, and it will strengthen the cooperation between whole Europe and India in years to come. So I hope we'll see more high-level visits from this region to India. We have already seen, this might be said that, with the Foreign Minister Jaishankar, he expressed many times that his aim was to develop stronger ties with smaller countries from the European Union, from Central Europe. He was aware a couple of years ago already that India has somehow didn't pay enough attention to these countries from Central Europe, that India's foreign policy was focused on big players from the Western Europe like Germany or France or UK. And now we are at the verge of more robust cooperation, and it will strengthen the European Union's partnership with India in years to come.
Thank you. My last question from my side will be to my colleague Natalia. We had lots of questions, discussions about the possibility of India as a peace mediator. There were lots of these questions from especially Indian journalists. Also, a lot of during the mutual briefing by Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky, there were lots of talk on the peace. So my question to you will be, how do you see, from the Ukrainian perspective, India's role in gaining peace in Ukraine? Do you see it, and which this role could be?
From my point of view, India does not seek the role of mediator between two countries. India calls for dialogue and negotiations, but India's position is that the parties of the conflict should find a solution at the negotiation table. Unlike China, India does not try to create and promote alternative ways of achieving peace and undermines. It is very good because China undermines Ukrainians' diplomatic efforts. India is aware that currently neither Ukraine nor Russia is ready to sit down at the negotiation table. However, India's role is important in terms of diplomatic support for Ukrainians' effort, including participation in all peace summits and the global peace summit. The Ukrainian government always emphasizes that it is moving in two ways, military and diplomatic. Both of them are important, and India can use its direct and behind-the-scenes diplomacy to implement some points of the peace formula. India did it in the case of a grain initiative and in the case of Zaporizhzhia plant. But India also have a very good experience during the Korean War in returning prisoners. So I think in this way, India also could be part of this process. I have already mentioned that it would be important for Ukraine if India agreed to hold the peace summit on its territory. From my point of view, India could use its influence on the countries of the so-called Global South and help involve in Ukrainian peace initiatives. China is trying to use its influence and seek to unite non-Western countries around his alternative peace proposal. But China's actions are not aimed at achieving peace in Ukraine, but at strengthening his global role in the world. So we need Indian help in this way. In Ukraine, there is an awareness that simple calls for peace have not stopped Putin and will not stop Putin. Russia must feel the pressure on itself, diplomatic, economic, political. Yesterday, we had the most massive shelling by missiles and drones during the Russian aggression. Tonight, Russia hit civilian infrastructure again. Ukrainians are now without electricity again. At night, Russia launched a missile at a hotel in Kryvyi Rih. Yesterday, Russia drones attacked residential buildings in Lutsk. Russia is deliberately killing civilians. But Putin has the resources to wage war. The Russian economy was able to withstand, in particular, due to the diversification of its export of energy resources. This is a serious income them for the Russian military machine. That is why Volodymyr Zelensky mentioned the export of Russia oil during the meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Unfortunately, Russia and Putin cannot be stopped only by calls for peace. Yes, it is important that those countries, that countries like India, show and express its disagreement with Russian actions. But Russia must feel the pressure and devastating consequences of waging war in order to stop it. And that's what we try to explain our Indian friends, colleagues, that what was our president tried to explain to Indian delegation and Prime Minister Modi. So we need India's more complex role in to stop war, I think.
Okay, thank you. Now we have questions in the chat, and if you have more, you can raise your hand. The first one, I think, you can choose who will answer, but I think it could be to Professor Sachdeva. So the question is from the Norwegian Embassy in Kyiv. And it is regards the second peace summit. President Zelensky told media that he would be open to have this in India, but that only if India stands behind the communique from the last peace summit. Do you think it is possible, realistic, that India could join the communique? What would be the main issues with the current communique? So do you see it possible that India can join the communique, Professor Sachdeva?
Well, I think everything is possible. Nothing can be ruled out, depending on how things are evolving between India and Ukraine and how situation in Ukraine is evolving. Because, in the last 2.5 years, what we have seen, things have evolved. Everybody's position has also, to some extent, has evolved. And many things also depends on, the war situation, how the war actually, because, why, in fact, sometime I think, Natalia was mentioning quite extensively about India's position and Chinese position and others. Sometimes, Indian position looks very abstract, and what, the Prime Minister says, not an era of war, or, you should just talk and find things to negotiation, as if, these are just, big talk, means nothing basically sometimes to some analysts. But I think there is also, one has to realize that how both the parties, they look at this situation. Because, I spent a couple of years in Afghanistan. For many years, I think the whole Europeans, and I was interacting with a lot with the Europeans, they were also telling everyone that there is no military solution to Afghanistan problem. So you have to find certain kind of, some other solution in which you have to negotiate to some extent with all the warring parties, and maybe you have to find some space for Taliban, etc. And then the other side was not willing to talk at all. At the end, what we have now is actually they have found some kind of a military solution to the problem, not really any, and then they are back, and we are in a very different situation now. So here again, in fact, I think what perhaps India has been saying, because if the perception sometimes is also with many Indian analysts that the both sides are trying to find the solution. The West, I mean, in the sense, is also pushing for more, weaponization and everything. And then in the process, the Ukraine is being destroyed. And then the Russians are doing what they have been doing for the last 2.5 years or even before. So, if you go by this road, actually, there's more and more destruction, and then we are not really able to find if situation become more and more complicated. Yes, situation is very difficult, and territorial integrity and sovereignty is also very, very sacrosanct of Ukraine. But still, I think there are ways when you can, find certain solutions within all these kind of complicated situation. India would be willing to play whatever positive role it can, and even India is participating in these peace summits, and since they have been on all the UN resolutions, or also more or less they had abstained. So they thought perhaps while abstaining at that point of time, or just not participating in this, might be the easiest way to go. But now things are becoming more complex, and maybe as things evolve, India's position might change, and then we'll have more perhaps India feel that if both parties are willing to accept slightly more extended role of India in one way or the other, India would be willing to do that. And I think there won't be any problem in doing that, because they are looking, because as I said, there is a new momentum in India and Ukrainian relations. So one should not rule out anything. India would be willing to do more and more, wherever, without, sacrificing its own interest. And I think that when your Prime Minister Zelensky was saying that instead of that you should be with us rather than with Russians, I think that perhaps is a bit too much at this point of time to us, that India will continue to work with Russians, at the same time also would like to work with Ukraine, and then try to see what solution we can really find. Things would evolve. We'll see how things are evolving.
Thank you. And there is the second question. There are also two more questions. One we already answered. I think Professor Sachdeva answered about the perception of the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Moscow, in a perception in New Delhi. And the second question is also from Ina from Norwegian Embassy in Kiev. Could India play in the peace? Which role could India play in the peace formula? So President Zelensky suggested that India could play a role in, for example, in Group 4 on the return of Ukrainian children. Would India be interested in taking such a role? And do you see India take this role within the peace formula, or maybe outside to keep it neutral position? So I don't know.
No, I think, details perhaps, the government official would be able to know better what exactly they are doing. But my understanding is that India would be willing to play more and more constructive role in this whole situation, in whatever way, where it feels that it can really make some difference. So I think India is it's seriously, I would think we'll be able to do that. Now, which particular one, what you have suggested, 5 or 4, whatever, those are the matters of detail. But I think India would be able to do more and more constructive role and positive contribution to this whole peace building. Peace, whatever the efforts have been going on there.
Okay,
Without even offering any something new for India, because as rightly was mentioned by Natalia, that just build on whatever has been going on, and if both things, rather than providing something, because you have your own peace plan as well. So, there are already a couple of things which are floated, and if something is being built on, so we can contribute something, I think India would be able to do that.
Okay, we have two questions from the audience, Mr. Alex Sharrow and then Armi Chana. And just pay attention, we have 5 minutes, so very brief questions and very brief answers. Mr. Sharrow, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I got question for Professor Sachdeva and maybe for Natalia Butyrska. By the way, nice to see you again, at least in Zoom. There is one issue which I really don't understand, maybe because I'm more involved in economic issue than political one. I mean proposals to start negotiation while Russian army still occupies Ukrainian territory. In 1999, India had proposed negotiation with Pakistan, and then even it was meeting between two prime ministers, but only after withdrawal of Pakistan troops from Jammu and Kashmir area. The same situation was on in the Chinese border. Negotiation after withdrawal troops of other countries. And I surprised. Does it mean that India reject its own expertise, or situation in Ukraine is looked from New Delhi in some another way? Please.
Yeah. No, I don't find any contradiction here, because India's position, as you have explained, with Pakistan and also with China, we have a border dispute which has still not been resolved. But despite that, we are still not fighting with each other. So, yes, those problems are there, and very, very complicated problems, for decades old problems. And still there was a ceasefire with the agreement on tranquility with China for so many years, which was held. And only thing in the last few years, this is what exactly India has again been suggesting to China, that we continue to have this tranquility thing, that you have kind of trying to break that agreement which we had. And the same is also with Pakistan, that yes, there are things which need to be resolved, which there are mechanisms which have been set up, but that can be done even without fighting with each other. So where we are, we can just not that they have agreed to Indian borders and India has agreed to their borders, but that we continue to hold our own positions, but at least stop the fighting and then start negotiation at different levels, political level, military level, whatever. Then hopefully we'll be able to find certain solutions. That at that point of time, it's not just only about this. I mean, China has also become India's #1 trading partner, despite having all that problem what we have with China. Since 2005 or 2006, China has always been #1 or #2 trading partners. The last 1 or 2 years, United States become India's #1 trading partner. China has again become India's #1 partner. So what you have suggested, that not that something in India is saying something in its own context. And of course, geography is different, situations are very, very different. I'm not saying that whatever Russia has done in Ukraine in any way is similar to anything else. No, but there are even when you have very difficult those kind of situations, maybe it's better not to fight and then find certain solutions. This is what perhaps India has been thinking about its own problems. And it's not that India would look Ukraine differently, because as I said, territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine is paramount. There's absolutely no compromise on that. But yes, there are problems, and they have already violated that one. So first you have to figure it out, with them, that okay, even if they might be having, even after it's a Crimea, even that was also territorial integrity violation of, say, for example, Crimea, of Ukraine. But the West reaction was not exactly what happened later. So it means somehow they said not that they accepted that the Crimea is part of Russia, but still they were kind of trying to work with Russia. Can we figure it out something? But later on things have really escalated. Then of course things are more difficult now, very, very complicated and difficult. But still, I think one has to go back and find certain things, that at least because the destruction of Ukraine and the whole war and impact of that on the European security and the global situation is much more important sometimes. So this is what I think others are trying to argue, and there's no contradiction, as you said.
Thank you.
Dr. Kugiel, do you have a commentary? If you have commentary, you can comment now, and then Army. Okay, but very brief, please.
If I may join and disagree with Gulshan Sachdeva for the sake of vibrant conversation, I think it was very good point raised by Alex Sharov. And I would agree with him rather that there are inconsistencies and contradictions in India's positions when it comes what it prescribes to others and what it prescribes in its own situation. And possibly the best example is current situation and relations with Pakistan. The relations are very tense. There's no political dialogue and interactions between two countries because India's position is that terrorism and dialogue do not come together. Yeah, terrorism and talk cannot be pursued simultaneously. First, Pakistan must stop using terrorism, and then only we can, move forward in establishing normal relations with Pakistan. But in case of Ukraine and war in Ukraine, it seems that India accepts that war and dialogue can go hand in hand. So there are contradictions, but we need to be realistic and not be over-optimistic. Yeah? There was a great deal of optimism after the visit of Prime Minister Modi, but we cannot be naive. India is pursuing foreign policy based on its own national interests, and in this interest, good relations with Russia are of great importance. So for that reason, probably India will never join the peace formula presented by President Zelensky, but it can play a very positive and constructive role in bringing and in helping to find a peace solution on a different footing, in different contexts, when the situation on the battlefield will only go in this direction that Ukraine will be more willing to make some hard decisions. And in this way, India can still play a very positive role. But we must be also aware that India's position is clear and consistent when it comes to the peace in Ukraine. India has repeatedly said that the peace can be achieved only when it takes into consideration interests of both sides. And both sides need to be sitting at the table, and their interests and concerns must be addressed. So it will not be a solution that would be preferable and expected by the Ukrainian side and Poland and other countries in Europe. But if the situation gets worse on the battlefield, then and we will need to find for any new peace formula, then probably India can play a role. And I think the peace summit in India is very probable later this year or maybe next year. And it will allow India to use this good relations with Russia for a good sake, to help both countries to find some kind of acceptable, not ideal, but acceptable end to this conflict.
Thank you, Dr. Kugiel. Army, Channa, or is yours very brief question?
Yeah, please. Hi, I'm Army Channa, the co-founder and the president of Indo-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We have been already working on a lot of reconstruction projects, but the problem is that whenever I am getting someone to get into the project in Ukraine for reconstruction, they always say, all the people that I've contacted, they are always saying, let the war end. So we are already having MOUs with 2 city councils, and we are proposing their solar plant operations to Indian companies. All the companies that have had the conversation with are waiting for the war to end to start the project. And in March, with the collaboration of the Embassy of Ukraine in the Republic of India, we did a seminar having all the mayors come into. The minister Kugiel was, he opened the seminar, which was on basically trade and investment for a better future in Ukraine. But all these things are right now only on talk. I've been doing this for 8 months, 9 months, continuously every day. But there is no practically everybody is so scared of the war in the Indian from the Indian side, they don't want to put any investment in the war country. Secondly, we also have around for reconstruction of Ukraine, Kiev Economic School of Economics in Kiev has done a study that Ukraine will need approximately 450,000 to 500,000 people for reconstruction of Ukraine, and they don't have these people. So the only people they can look for is either from India, Indian subcontinent, or the Chinese. But they will not take Chinese because of their support to Russia. So the Indian subcontinent is the only viable alternative to them. Also, I have 1,000 people that I'm currently looking to, the companies which are actually finding problems to get employees into Ukraine. But war is the only fear that people are not going to Ukraine. So I think this is we are trying to support. So maybe Dr. Sachdeva, do you have any suggestions for me?
Well, there are only, I mean, I think you have raised very valid point, and also the potential of Indian involvement in different ways in Ukraine. This problem, this there in any reconstruction when you are looking in any conflict situation. Because, the private sector will not enter till the time situation is normal, and situation will not become normal till the time we have reconstruction. I mean, at least some infrastructure and things are in place. But at the same time, you will also find that in many other places where war or conflict or different things are going on, there is also reconstruction continue to work. So this is what, in fact, I was hinting, and perhaps we need to work more on this, particularly Indian involvement into this and the clarity. Because what you really need to do is that the private sector will not put their money immediately at this kind of situation when the conflict is on. So it is the government money which has to come in, or some international funding, and then you can involve some, private players with that kind of investment. Some reconstruction will begin. That reconstruction will have its own momentum. Then when people are there, businessmen are there, they will see certain positive things happening. So then they start coming in. So this is what I was, in fact, expecting during this visit, that maybe Prime Minister would announce some relatively large, significant package or involvement into the Indian reconstruction. That I didn't really see, but maybe that kind of homework wasn't really done by the ministries, and maybe now things have been more and more. I think the intercontinental, I mean, the meetings, official meetings, and the economic and other, joint meetings are going to take place, and more engagement between policymakers in Ukraine and India and the business people will happen. I think it will happen slowly and slowly, and the peace process, in whatever way it will go on. The war situation, the momentum, wherever it is, they have its own dynamics. They will continue to wait, but the similar kind of also momentum on the reconstruction also has to happen from, I mean, the government. I mean, at the international level, things are happening. From the European Union side or from the World Bank and other multilateral organization. But I think the Indian involvement I'm talking about, how India, there are a lot of opportunities here. I mean, it's not just only about the mobility, as you have mentioned, and many, when you have the reconstruction of that huge nature, so many Indian companies have capacities, they can get involved. So we need to sensitize them. So they may not put their money to begin with, but the money has to come from somewhere else, getting them involved, and then after some time, I think they will get more and more interested in this project.
And in this visit, there were okay.
I know you can. You can answer.
I was
just I think answer to Patryk. I mean, you will find that kind of inconsistency, not just only in the Indian position. I think those kind of inconsistencies, if we are trying to figure it out, you can find with Americans and Europeans and everybody, what they have been doing and what they have been preaching. If we go that road, I think then we'll not be able to resolve many of those issues, because all of them have their own national interest. They do, and you're right. I mean, India has its own national interest. They cannot really abandon Russia, but within that, they would also see a lot of national interest actually in engaging in Ukraine as well. So this is what perhaps we need to focus more on.
Thank you so much for this very vibrant discussion. It was an honor for me to moderate this discussion, and it took a little bit more time than we expected, but I hope it was interesting, and we see that so many people are still with us. There were so many questions. So we need to continue with such discussions more, especially, I think, this is my personal position, engaging with Poland and Czech Republic, because together, for us, for all of us, this cooperation with India is an important issue. And thank you for the distinguished speakers. Thank you also thank you to Artem Noskov from the Embassy of Ukraine in India for joining us, for being with us. And hope to meet you once more soon for the discussion already of the visits of leaders of Ukraine and Poland to India, and the results of these visits, hopefully successful results of these visits. So thank you and have a nice day for Ukrainians, hopefully with electricity. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Follow our social networks for the future events.
Thank you.
Thank you.